Hello everyone, welcome back to the original story from Omega Story, and it at take a company like part to let's get started.
Subscribe to Storylab for more stories. Now let's begin this one. Chapter 1. The Foundation. Marshall Stout had learned early in life that the loudest voice in the room was rarely the most powerful. At 34, he'd built an empire on that principle. Quiet observation, strategic patience, and precise execution. While others bragged about their accomplishments, Marshall let his results speak for themselves. He'd grown up in Riverside, a working-class neighborhood where his father, Herman Stout, had worked double shifts at the steel mill to keep food on the table. Marshall watched his old man come home every night with calloused hands and an aching back, never complaining, always planning. Herman had one rule: son, weak men make noise. Strong men make moves. Marshall took that lesson to heart. While attending community college, he worked nights as a dishwasher at Giuseppe's, a struggling Italian restaurant downtown. The owner, an elderly immigrant named Carlo, saw something in the quiet young man who observed everything and wasted nothing. Over 3 years, Carlo taught Marshall the restaurant business. Not just cooking and service, but the intricate dance of managing suppliers, staff, and customer psychology. When Carlo's health failed, he offered to sell Marshall the restaurant for a fraction of its value. Marshall was 25 with barely $5,000 to his name. But he remembered his father's words and made his move. He took out loans, worked 100-hour weeks, and transformed Giuseppe's into the hottest dining spot in the city. Within 5 years, he owned 4 successful restaurants and a catering company. That's when he met Allison Prince at a charity gala. She was beautiful, confident, and came from old money. The Prince family owned commercial real estate across 3 states. Allison was charming during their courtship, though Marshall noticed how she'd sometimes make subtle comments about his humble beginnings or working-class charm. He ignored the red flags, convinced that love would bridge their different worlds. Her family was less enthusiastic. Aaron Prince, her father, was cordial but distant. Her brother Jared was openly hostile from day one, calling Marshall a gold digger, despite the fact that Marshall had refused any financial help from the Prince family. Jared worked in the family business, but spent most of his time at country clubs, living off the trust fund he'd inherited at 21. The marriage started well enough. Allison seemed proud of Marshall's work ethic and success. But over the past year, something had shifted. She'd begun spending more time with her family, and her attitude toward Marshall had grown increasingly dismissive. She'd stopped attending his restaurant openings, stopped asking about his business ventures, and started making comments about how he smelled like kitchen grease when he came home. Last month, Marshall had soft-launched his most ambitious project yet, the Sterling, an upscale restaurant that combined innovative cuisine with old-world elegance. He'd kept the ownership quiet, operating through an LLC while he worked out the kinks. Only his business partner and childhood friend, Owen Durham, knew the full extent of Marshall's involvement. "You sure about keeping this under wraps?" Owen had asked last week as they reviewed the Sterling's financial projections in Marshall's downtown office. "Absolutely," Marshall had replied, his dark eyes calm and calculating. "I want to see how it performs without my name attached. Pure merit." But there was another reason, one Marshall barely admitted to himself. He wanted to see if Allison would notice. If she would ask about the late nights, the mysterious phone calls, the blueprints spread across his home office desk. She hadn't. Not once. Now, sitting in their spacious living room in the upscale Riverside Hills neighborhood, Marshall watched his wife get ready for tonight's dinner. Allison had insisted they attend a family meal at some new restaurant Jared had discovered. Marshall knew the place, the Sterling. His place. "Are you even listening to me?" Allison snapped, applying her lipstick with practiced precision. "I'm listening," Marshall said evenly. Jared made reservations at this amazing new place. It's supposed to be impossible to get into, but obviously he has connections. She paused, studying him in the mirror. "You might want to change. That shirt looks cheap." Marshall glanced down at his navy button-down. It was custom-made, cost more than most people's monthly rent. But he didn't correct her. "I'll change." "Good. And please, just be normal tonight. Don't embarrass me with your work stories." Nobody wants to hear about restaurant drama. Marshall nodded slowly, watching her primp. The woman he'd married 3 years ago wouldn't have said that. Or maybe she would have, and he'd been too in love to notice. His phone buzzed. A text from Owen. Sterling's packed tonight. Manager says there's a VIP family reservation. Want me to handle it? Marshall typed back, I'll handle it personally. Chapter 2. The Gathering Storm. The drive to the Sterling took 20 minutes through Saturday evening traffic. Allison spent the entire time on the phone with her mother, discussing some yacht party Marshall wasn't invited to. He didn't mind. It gave him time to think. The Sterling occupied a converted historical building in the revitalized Arts District. Marshall had spent 14 months renovating it, preserving the original architecture while installing state-of-the-art kitchen equipment. The exterior maintained its 1920s charm, Art Deco detailing, brass fixtures, and tall windows that glowed warmly in the evening light. This place looks expensive, Allison said as Marshall pulled into the valet area. I'm surprised you could afford to eat here. Marshall handed his keys to the valet, a young man named Tommy who recognized him immediately but remained professionally neutral. I think we'll manage. Inside, the hostess, Dana Daly, a sharp young woman Marshall had personally hired from culinary school, greeted them with a professional smile. Her eyes flickered with recognition when she saw Marshall, but she maintained her composure. Good evening. Do you have a reservation? Prince Party, Allison said with the imperious tone she reserved for service workers. We're meeting my brother. Dana checked her tablet. Of course. Your party has already arrived. Please follow me. The main dining room was a masterpiece of ambience, soft lighting, white tablecloths, strategically placed art pieces, and an open kitchen where diners could watch the culinary team work. Every detail reflected Marshall's vision. Elegant but not pretentious, innovative but not alienating. Jared Prince sat at a corner table, his arms draped over the booth's back like he owned the place. He was 32, 2 years younger than Allison, with the soft features of someone who'd never missed a meal or worked a day of hard labor. Next to him sat their father, Aaron Prince, a distinguished man in his 60s with silver hair and calculating eyes. Also present was Carrie McConnell, Marshall's older sister. She was 37, a successful civil attorney with sharp wit and sharper instincts. Marshall had invited her, knowing he'd need at least one ally at this dinner. Carrie caught his eye and gave him a subtle nod. Well, Jared said loudly as they approached. Look who decided to show up. Thought you might be too busy flipping burgers to join us. Several nearby diners glanced over. Marshall ignored the comment, pulling out a chair for Allison before taking his own seat. Carrie leaned over and whispered, "Deep breaths, little brother." Aaron Prince extended his hand to Marshall with the courtesy of a man who'd mastered social obligation without warmth. "Marshall, good to see you." "Aaron, thanks for including me." "Well, you are family," Aaron said, though his tone suggested this was unfortunate rather than fortunate. A server approached, a young man Marshall had hired 3 weeks ago. "Good evening, folks. Can I start you with some drinks?" Jared ordered a $50 scotch without looking at the menu. Allison ordered champagne. Aaron requested wine. Carrie asked for iced tea, and Marshall ordered water. "Water?" Jared laughed. "Can't afford a real drink, buddy." "I'm driving," Marshall said simply. Right. Gotta protect that 10-year-old Toyota." "It's a Honda," Marshall corrected mildly. "And it's reliable." Carrie kicked him under the table, a warning. Marshall understood. She'd seen these family dinners devolve before. Allison leaned toward her brother, speaking just loud enough for Marshall to hear. "He insists on being practical. It's embarrassing. I'd be embarrassed too if my husband couldn't provide properly," Jared replied, his voice dripping with condescension. Aaron said nothing, but his slight smile indicated approval of his son's commentary. Marshall sipped his water, his expression neutral. But inside, gears were turning. He'd planned to simply enjoy the reveal at the end of dinner, watch their faces when they realized who owned the restaurant they were praising. But now, seeing their casual cruelty, their easy dismissal of him, something hardened in his chest. They didn't just disrespect him. They enjoyed it. Carrie touched his arm gently. "So, Marshall, how's business?" "Growing," he said simply. Still running those little restaurants? Jared asked. What do you have? 2, 3, 4 restaurants and a catering company. Cute. Dad owns 47 commercial properties. But hey, we all work at our own level, right? Marshall nodded slowly. We do indeed. The server returned with their drinks and took their dinner orders. Jared ordered the most expensive items on the menu, making a show of it. Allison followed his lead. Aaron ordered moderately. Carrie chose the salmon. Marshall selected the chef's special, a dish he'd personally developed with his head chef. As they waited for their food, Jared regaled the table with stories of his recent vacation to the Maldives, his new Porsche, and his latest business deal, which sounded suspiciously like their father handing him another easy win. Must be nice, Jared said, turning to Marshall with mock sympathy, having to actually work for a living. Some of us were just born smarter, I guess. We're luckier, Marshall agreed. Luck has nothing to do with it. It's breeding. Class. Something you can't buy, no matter how many little pasta joints you open. Carrie's jaw tightened, but Marshall remained calm. You might be right. His easy agreement seemed to disappoint Jared, who'd clearly been hoping for a reaction. Allison jumped in to support her brother. Marshall, you have to understand. Jared works very hard in the family business. Not everyone can just coast on manual labor and call it entrepreneurship. Marshall set down his water glass carefully. I don't recall calling my work entrepreneurship. I call it cooking. Exactly, Jared said triumphantly. You're a cook. We're business people. Big difference. Aaron finally spoke, his voice measured. There's no shame in service work, Jared. Someone has to do it. The condescension in his tone was somehow worse than Jared's open hostility. Carrie looked like she was about to explode, but Marshall caught her eye and shook his head slightly. Not yet. The food arrived, presented beautifully by a team of servers. Marshall watched as Jared and Allison immediately began praising the cuisine, the presentation, the ambience. This place is incredible, Allison gushed. The owner must be brilliant. Probably some fancy European chef, Jared said. Someone with real training and pedigree. Not like these American wannabes. Marshall cut into his steak, perfectly cooked to medium rare exactly as he'd trained his kitchen staff. The chef is from Detroit, actually. How would you know? Jared challenged. I pay attention. To what? The help. Marshall smiled slightly. Always. Chapter 3, The Mass Cracks. Dinner continued with more of the same. Jared and Allison trading barbs disguised as jokes, Aaron's silent approval, and Carrie's increasing tension. Marshall remained calm, responding minimally, observing everything. He noticed how Allison laughed at her brother's jokes, even the ones aimed at her husband. He saw how she touched Jared's arm affectionately, leaning into her family while physically distancing herself from Marshall. He observed Aaron's calculating glances, assessing, measuring, finding Marshall wanting. But he also noticed other things. The way Jared drank heavily, his third scotch arriving before his entree was finished. The way Allison's laughter had a brittle quality, almost desperate. The way Aaron kept checking his phone, distracted despite his show of family unity. So Marshall, Aaron said during a lull in conversation, Allison mentioned you've been working late frequently. Money troubles? No, sir. New project? Another restaurant? Jared laughed. How many failed ventures before you admit you're in over your head? None of my restaurants have failed. Yet, Jared added with a smirk. Carrie finally snapped. You know what, Jared? Marshall has built everything he has from scratch. What have you built? Besides a drinking problem and an inflated ego. The table went silent. Jared's face flushed red. Excuse me. You heard me. You inherited everything. Marshall earned everything. There's a difference. Carrie, Marshall said quietly, it's fine. No, it's not fine, Carrie insisted, her attorney voice emerging. I've sat through 2 years of these dinners watching them treat you like garbage. You're worth 10 of them. Marshall. Allison's eyes flashed with anger. How dare you speak to my family that way? Your family? Carrie shot back. Marshall is your family. Or have you forgotten your wedding vows? Don't lecture me about marriage, Allison hissed. You're divorced. At least I had the decency to leave when I realized it wasn't working. Unlike you, who just slowly poisons everything while pretending to be superior. Aaron raised his hand. Ladies, please. We're in public. Right, Carrie said bitterly. Wouldn't want to embarrass the precious Prince family. Marshall placed a hand on his sister's arm. Carrie, thank you, but I can handle this. She looked at him, saw something in his eyes, and sat back. Fine, but I'm done being polite. Jared leaned forward, his words slurring slightly from the alcohol. You know what your problem is, Marshall? You're weak. You let everyone walk all over you. Allison tells me how you just take it at home, never stand up for yourself. It's pathetic. Jared, Allison said, but she was blushing, confirming the truth of his statement. Marshall's expression didn't change. Is that what you discuss? My behavior at home. Among other things, Jared said with a cruel grin. She tells me everything. About your sad little life, your mediocre income, your desperate attempts to seem successful. That's enough, Aaron said, but without real force. No, Dad, he needs to hear this. He needs to understand his place. Jared turned to Marshall. You're only at this table because Allison felt sorry for you. You're charity, a project, but everyone's getting tired of pretending you belong in our world. Marshall took a slow drink of water. Around them, other diners were definitely listening now, the drama at their table becoming entertainment for the restaurant. Allison didn't defend him. Aaron said nothing. Carrie looked ready to throw her drink in Jared's face. You know what the saddest part is? Jared continued, emboldened by their silence. You actually think you're something. You actually believe owning a couple of struggling restaurants makes you our equal. But you'll always be that dishwasher who got lucky. And deep down, you know it. Family dinner at fancy restaurant. Marshall thought, the scene unfolding exactly as he'd anticipated. Must be nice living OFF my sister. Jared's next words would be. Marshall had heard variations of this before, but tonight would be different. Must be nice, Jared sneered, living off my sister's family money. Some of us actually work. Marshall sipped his water, letting the words hang in the air. He could feel Carrie vibrating with fury beside him. Could see the satisfaction on Allison's face as her brother voiced what she clearly felt. Could observe Aaron's slight nod of approval. The waiter approached nervously. Sir, the owner wanted me to... Marshall looked up and smiled. Tell them I'll be there in 10. The table fell silent. Jared recovered first, laughing. You know the owner? What? Did you cater some party for them? Allison joined in. Marshall, don't embarrass yourself. This place is way above your connections. Marshall stood slowly, his movements deliberate. He straightened his cheap shirt and looked at each of them in turn. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but carried across the table with absolute clarity. I'm the owner. The words landed like a bomb. Jared's laugh died. Allison's smile froze. Aaron's eyes widened slightly. The first genuine emotion Marshall had seen from him all night. You're what? Jared stammered. The Sterling. This restaurant. I own it. I designed it. I hired the staff. I created the menu you've been praising all evening. Marshall glanced at Allison. That fancy European chef is my head chef from Giuseppe's. The brilliant owner is your husband. That's not possible, Allison whispered. The LLC is listed as Sterling Enterprises. I own Sterling Enterprises. Owen Durham and I opened this place 6 weeks ago. Soft launch. Tonight was supposed to be a quiet observation, seeing how the restaurant functions without my direct involvement. He paused. Until you insisted we come here. Carrie started laughing, a genuine sound of delight. Oh, this is perfect. Jared's face had gone from red to pale. You're lying. Marshall pulled out his phone, showed them a photo of himself with the staff during the opening, another of him in the kitchen with the chef, another of the business license with his name clearly visible. This is some kind of trick, Jared insisted desperately. No trick, just observation. I wanted to see how you'd behave in my restaurant, surrounded by my work, eating food I helped create. Marshall's voice remained level, but there was steel underneath. And you didn't disappoint. You show me exactly who you are. Aaron found his voice. Marshall, perhaps we should discuss this privately. We're done discussing anything. Marshall turned to Allison. You told him everything about our marriage? About my sad little life? My desperate attempts to seem successful? Allison couldn't meet his eyes. Marshall, you're banned, Marshall said simply. All of you. From this restaurant. Security will escort you out. You can't do that, Jared shouted, drawing even more attention. I absolutely can. This is my property. You're no longer welcome here. Dana appeared with 2 security guards, professionals Marshall had hired specifically for handling difficult situations. Mr. Stout, is there a problem? The Prince party is leaving. Please escort them out and ensure they understand they're not welcome back. You bastard, Jared snarled, standing up. This is assault. Discrimination. Carrie pulled out her business card, handing it to the security guard. I'm an attorney. This is a private business. The owner has the right to refuse service to anyone. If Mr. Prince threatens legal action, have him call my office. Aaron stood, his face a mask of controlled fury. This is a mistake, Marshall. No, sir. Marrying your daughter was the mistake. This is the correction. Allison grabbed Marshall's arm. You can't humiliate us like this. Marshall gently removed her hand. I didn't humiliate you. You did that yourselves. I just provided the venue. Other diners were watching openly now, phones out, recording. The scene would be on social media within the hour. The Prince family, so proud of their reputation, being escorted out of a restaurant by security. As security guided them toward the exit, Jared turned back. You're going to regret this. My father will destroy you. Marshall didn't respond. He simply watched them leave, his expression calm. When they were gone, the restaurant erupted in applause. Other diners had clearly enjoyed the show, and word had spread among the staff about what happened. Carrie hugged her brother tightly. That was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Marshall hugged her back, but his mind was already moving forward. This is just the beginning. What do you mean? They won't let this go. Aaron Prince doesn't forgive public embarrassment. And Allison, he trailed off. What about her? Marshall's eyes were hard. She made her choice. Now she lives with it. Chapter 4, The Aftermath. The next morning, Marshall woke up alone. Allison hadn't come home. Her belongings were still in the house, but she was gone. A text on his phone from an unknown number simply read, You've made a powerful enemy. AP, Aaron Prince, already making threats. Marshall sat at his kitchen table with coffee and his laptop, reviewing the social media explosion from last night. Videos of the confrontation had gone viral. Hashtag Sterling Drama was trending locally. Most comments supported Marshall, praising him for standing up to entitled rich people. But there were others, clearly from Prince family allies, painting him as vindictive and cruel. His phone rang. Owen Durham. Brother, you're famous, Owen said without preamble. Have you seen the numbers? Numbers? The Sterling is booked solid for the next 3 months. Every foodie and drama lover in the city wants to eat at the place where that epic takedown happened. We're going to need to hire more staff. Marshall allowed himself a small smile. Unexpected, but not unwelcome. There's more. I got a call from Carolyn Lara at the Tribune. She wants to do a profile piece on you. Local chef makes good angle. Tell her I'll think about it. Marshall, this is good publicity. It's also attention. Attention brings scrutiny. What are you worried about? Your businesses are solid. Your reputation is clean. I'm not worried about my reputation. I'm worried about Aaron Prince's reach. He's been in this city for 40 years. He has connections I can't match. So what are you going to do? Marshall was quiet for a moment. Research, preparation, and if necessary, war. After hanging up with Owen, Marshall spent the next 3 hours digging into the Prince family empire. He'd done surface research before marrying Allison, but now he went deeper. Financial records, business partnerships, property holdings, lawsuits, public and settled privately. What he found was interesting. Aaron Prince's real estate empire was impressive, but not invincible. Several properties were underperforming. Some had legal complications, zoning disputes, tenant lawsuits, environmental concerns. The family's wealth was substantial, but not infinite, and Aaron had a pattern of aggressive leveraging, taking on debt to acquire more properties. More interesting was Jared's role in the business. On paper, he was vice president of acquisitions. In reality, he'd overseen 3 major deals in the past 5 years, all of which had been either breaking even or losing money. Aaron kept bailing him out, protecting his son's reputation at the company's expense. Marshall made notes, created spreadsheets, built a profile of his enemy's weaknesses. His father's voice echoed in his mind. Know your opponent better than they know themselves. His phone buzzed. Carrie, you okay? She asked. Fine. You, exhilarated. That was the best dinner theater I've ever attended. But Marshall, be careful. Aaron's dangerous when he's been embarrassed. I know. What's your plan? Right now? Stay quiet. Let them make the first move. They will. Aaron can't let this stand. When they do, I'll be ready. And Allison? Marshall was quiet. Allison made her choice. She chose her family's approval over her marriage. That tells me everything I need to know. Do you still love her? I loved who I thought she was. The woman I married last night? I don't even know her. Carrie sighed. For what it's worth, she never deserved you. After they hung up, Marshall spent the afternoon at Giuseppe's, his first restaurant. The kitchen was his sanctuary, the place where everything made sense. He worked alongside his chef, preparing the evening's specials, losing himself in the familiar rhythms of cooking. His sous chef, a talented young woman named Viola Perry, worked beside him quietly before finally speaking. Mr. Stout, can I ask you something? Of course. That video that's going around, that was really your wife and her family? It was. And you really banned them? I did. Viola was quiet for a moment. Good. I've worked in kitchens for 10 years. Sir, people like that. They think we're invisible. What you did mattered. To people like me. Marshall looked at her, saw the sincerity in her eyes. Thank you, Viola. That means more than you know. That evening, as he was closing up, his phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed Allison's number. He almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Marshall. Her voice was cold. Allison, I'm staying with my parents. We need to talk about this. I'm listening. You humiliated my family. In public. In front of dozens of people. Do you have any idea what you've done? I removed disrespectful customers from my establishment. We're not customers. We're your family. Are we? Because last night, it seemed like I was the embarrassment you tolerated. The charity case Jared mentioned. Silence. Then, you took that out of context. Did I? Allison, you didn't defend me once. Not when Jared insulted my work, my income, my background. You laughed. You participated. So tell me, what context am I missing? You're being dramatic. Jared was drunk. He didn't mean. He meant every word. And so did you. And your father's silence was deafening. So this is it. Our marriage is over because of one bad dinner. Marshall closed his eyes. Our marriage was over before last night. Last night just made it obvious. Fine. Her voice turned sharp. But this isn't over, Marshall. You've made an enemy of my father. And you have no idea what he's capable of. Neither does he. Tell him that for me. She hung up. Marshall stood in the empty restaurant, surrounded by the empire he'd built, and felt the weight of what was coming. Chapter 5. The Counter-Move. 3 days passed in deceptive quiet. The Sterling continued to thrive on its viral fame. Giuseppe's and his other restaurants saw increased business from people curious about the chef who'd stood up to entitled wealth. Marshall's catering company booked 6 new events. On the surface, everything was perfect, but Marshall knew better. Aaron Prince was planning something. The attack came on Thursday morning. Marshall arrived at the Sterling to find a health inspector waiting, accompanied by 2 police officers. Marshall Stout? The inspector asked, a middle-aged man named Calvin Patton. That's me. We've received complaints about this establishment. Multiple violations, rodent infestation, improper food storage, health code violations. I need to conduct an immediate inspection. Marshall remained calm. Of course. But I should mention, we passed our regular inspection 2 weeks ago with 0 violations. Patton didn't meet his eyes. These are new complaints. Very detailed. Very specific. Marshall understood immediately. Aaron Prince had made his move. He stepped aside. Inspect away. My staff will cooperate fully. The inspection took 4 hours. Patton and his team went through everything. Kitchen, storage, bathrooms, offices. Marshall watched, making mental notes of Patton's demeanor. The inspector seemed uncomfortable, almost apologetic, going through motions he knew were pointless. Finally, Patton approached Marshall. "Mr. Stout, I found nothing. Your establishment is immaculate. Whoever filed these complaints either lied or was mistaken, or was paid to file false reports," Marshall said quietly. Patton's expression confirmed it. "I'm required to file my findings with the department. This matter is closed." After they left, Marshall called Owen. "Aaron's moving. He tried to shut us down with fake health violations. Did it work?" "No, but it won't be his last attempt." Owen was quiet. "Maybe you should consider backing down. Making peace. By apologizing for defending myself. By being strategic. Aaron Prince can make your life very difficult. He already has. He married me to his daughter and let her family treat me like dirt for 3 years. Now he's weaponizing city officials against my business. The only question is, what do I do about it? What can you do? He's got money, power, connections. So do I." Marshall interrupted. "Different connections, different kind of power, but power nonetheless." That afternoon, Marshall made a series of calls. First to Carolyn Lara at the Tribune, accepting her interview request, then to 3 other local media outlets, then to a certain city councilman, Rudy Escobar, who'd been a regular at Giuseppe's for years and had become a friend. "Rudy, I need advice about something," Marshall said when they met for coffee. The councilman, a sharp politician in his 50s, listened as Marshall explained the situation. When he finished, Rudy shook his head. "Aaron Prince is old school. He thinks money and threats are enough. But this is 2025, Marshall. Public opinion matters more than it used to." "That's what I thought, which is why I'm going public with my story. Be careful. He'll spin it his way. Make you the villain who attacked a sweet family for no reason. Let him try. I've got the videos. I've got witnesses. And I've got truth on my side." Rudy smiled. "You know what? I like your chances. And Marshall, if Aaron comes after you through official channels again, call me. Some of us on the council are tired of the Prince family thinking they own this city." That evening, Marshall sat down with Carolyn Lara for the interview. She was a seasoned journalist in her 40s, known for fair but penetrating reporting. "Mr. Stout, let's start with the obvious. The video from Saturday night has nearly 1 million views locally. Want to tell your side?" Marshall did. He laid out the full story, his background, his rise from dishwasher to owner, his marriage to Allison, the 3 years of subtle and not-so-subtle abuse from her family, and finally, the dinner that broke everything. "You could have just divorced her quietly," Carolyn observed. "Why the public confrontation?" "Because I'm tired of people like the Prince family believing they can treat service workers, immigrants, and anyone from a different background as beneath them. I didn't plan the confrontation. They created it. I just refused to accept their premise that I was lesser than them. Some people are saying you were cruel, that you humiliated a family over a few rude comments." Marshall met her eyes. "Would you accept being called a parasite by your own family? Would you tolerate your spouse laughing while their brother insults everything you've built? At what point does self-defense become cruelty?" Carolyn smiled. "That's a good question. Let's talk about your businesses. You built something impressive from nothing. How does it feel to have the Prince family targeting you now?" "Expected. People who inherit power hate reminders that power can be earned. But I'm not worried. My businesses are solid. My reputation is earned, not inherited. And the truth tends to win out eventually." The article ran the next day with the headline, "From Dishwasher to Dynasty. Marshall Stout's American Dream Under Attack." It was fair, balanced, and devastatingly effective. Within hours, public opinion had solidified firmly in Marshall's favor. Aaron Prince responded that evening with a public statement calling Marshall's accusations false and defamatory, threatening legal action. But the court of public opinion had already rendered its verdict. Marshall knew this was far from over, but he'd successfully countered Aaron's first move. Now it was time for his own offensive. Chapter 6, The Investigation. Marshall spent the next week in careful preparation. If Aaron Prince wanted war, he'd get it, but on Marshall's terms. Carrie helped him navigate the legal complexities. If you're going to go after him, you need clean hands. Everything documented, everything above board. That's always been my policy. Good. Because Aaron's lawyers will scrutinize every aspect of your businesses, your taxes, your relationships. They'll look for anything to use against you. Marshall had anticipated this. He spent days with his accountants, reviewing every financial record, every transaction, every business decision. His books were immaculate. Years of meticulous record-keeping paying off. But he was also researching Aaron Prince with the same thoroughness. What he discovered was fascinating. Aaron's real estate empire was built on aggressive acquisitions and creative financing. Legal, mostly, but there were gray areas. Properties bought through shell companies. Deals structured to minimize taxes in ways that skirted the edge of legality. Tenant complaints that were settled with NDAs and payouts. But one property in particular caught Marshall's attention, the Riverside Towers project. Jared had spearheaded it 3 years ago, a luxury apartment complex that was supposed to be Aaron's legacy project. The building was completed, but barely half occupied. Maintenance issues plagued it. There were whispers of construction shortcuts and code violations. Marshall called in a favor from an old friend, Santos Delgado, who worked in construction inspection. Over drinks, Santos confirmed Marshall's suspicions. The Riverside Towers? Man, that place is a disaster waiting to happen. Structural issues, electrical problems, plumbing that's already failing. Someone cut a lot of corners to hit their budget. Any official reports? Nothing that stuck. The Princes have deep pockets for making inspectors look the other way. Santos paused. But I know a guy who worked on the project. He documented everything. Kept his own records in case it ever went south. He's scared, though. Prince family has threatened legal action against anyone who talks. What if I could protect him? Legally? Santos considered. You'd need leverage. Something to make the Princes back off from retaliating. Marshall smiled. Let me worry about that. Can you arrange a meeting? The meeting happened 2 days later in a quiet diner across town. The construction worker, Russell Gifford, was a weathered man in his 50s who looked perpetually nervous. I don't want trouble, Russell said immediately. I got a family. I'm not here to cause you trouble, Marshall assured him. I'm here to stop the Prince family from causing more. Russell looked skeptical. You're the restaurant guy, the one who threw them out of his place. That's me. Took guts. Most people just bend over for families like that. I'm not most people. Russell, I need to know about the Riverside Towers. The truth. What really happened there? Russell was quiet for a long moment, weighing his options. Finally, he spoke. It was supposed to be luxury. Top tier. But Jared Prince, he kept demanding changes to cut costs. Cheaper materials, faster construction, fewer inspections. I warned my supervisor. He warned his. Message went up the chain. But Jared, he's the boss's son. Nobody wants to tell him no. What kind of problems are we talking about? Structural integrity issues in the foundation. Electrical wiring that doesn't meet code. Fire suppression system that's inadequate for a building that size. The place is a death trap dressed up pretty. Marshall felt cold. People are living there. I know. Keeps me up at night. But what can I do? I'm just a worker. The Princes have armies of lawyers. I need your documentation. Everything you have. Russell shook his head. Can't do it. They'll destroy me. What if I could guarantee they won't? What if I can make sure this gets out in a way that protects you? Ow! Marshall pulled out his phone, showing Russell contacts, journalists, city council members, lawyers. I've got resources. But more importantly, I've got something they don't. What's that? Nothing to lose. They took my marriage, tried to destroy my reputation, attacked my businesses. I've got no reason to hold back anymore. Marshall leaned forward. Help me, Russell. Help me stop them before someone gets hurt in that building. Russell studied Marshall's face, seeing the determination there. Slowly, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a USB drive. Copies of everything. Photos, emails, inspection reports, real ones before they got altered. Building plans showing where corners got cut. It's all there. Marshall took the drive carefully. Thank you. This stays confidential until the right moment. And when I use it, I make sure your name stays out of it. Why are you doing this? The building thing. It's not about your wife anymore. Marshall was quiet. No, it's about the fact that people like the Princes think they're above consequences. They think money and power mean they can do whatever they want. Someone needs to remind them that's not true. Chapter 7. The trap. With Russell's evidence secured, Marshall began planning his next move. But Aaron Prince wasn't finished with his own offensive. The second attack came through Allison. Divorce papers arrived at Marshall's house, delivered by a courier. The terms were brutal. Allison was demanding half of everything, claiming she'd been instrumental in building his business empire, that her emotional support and social connections had enabled his success. Carrie read through the filing and laughed bitterly. This is insane. You built everything before you even met her. She has no legal claim. Her lawyers know that. This is about draining my resources fighting a frivolous lawsuit. So we fight it. No, we give her what she wants. Carrie stared at him. What? Not all of it. But I offer a generous settlement. More than she deserves, but less than she's asking. Something that looks like a compromise. Why would you do that? Marshall smiled grimly. Because I need her to feel like she won. I need the Prince family to think I'm backing down, that I'm scared, that I'm trying to make peace. But you're not. No, I'm setting the trap, and they're going to walk right into it. The settlement negotiation happened through lawyers. Marshall offered Allison a lump sum payment of $200,000 and kept all his businesses. In exchange, she'd sign a full release of claims and a confidentiality agreement about their marriage. To his surprise, Allison's lawyers countered with something unusual. They wanted him to sell the Sterling. Why? Marshall asked Carrie when she told him. Officially? They claim it's because the restaurant has negative associations with their family, and its success is somehow tied to humiliating them. But really, they want to hurt you. That restaurant is your pride and joy. They know it. Marshall considered. Tell them no. The Sterling is non-negotiable. But I'll raise the cash settlement to $250,000 if they drop it. They did. Within a week, the divorce was finalized. Allison got her money, signed her releases, and disappeared back into her family's world. Marshall was free, but he wasn't done. Using the information from Russell Gifford and his own research, Marshall built a comprehensive dossier on the Riverside Towers project. He documented every corner cut, every bribe paid, every inspection falsified. Then he added information about the Prince family's other questionable business practices, the shell companies, the aggressive leveraging, the pattern of legal threats against anyone who challenged them. But he didn't release it. Not yet. Instead, Marshall did something unexpected. He contacted Aaron Prince directly. This is a surprise, Aaron said coldly when he answered Marshall's call. I wanted to talk. About Allison, about the divorce, about everything. What's there to talk about? You got what you wanted, my daughter, out of your life. I never wanted that. I wanted a marriage. A partnership. But that's not what I got. Aaron was quiet. You embarrassed my family. Your family embarrassed themselves. I just stopped pretending it was okay. So why are you calling? Because I'm tired of fighting. The divorce is done. I'm moving on. I'd like to think we could coexist in the same city without constant warfare. Aaron laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. You think I'm just going to forget what you did? How you made us look? I think you're a businessman. And businessmen understand pragmatism. Fighting me costs you money, reputation, and time. For what? Pride. Pride matters. So does peace. I'm offering a truce, Aaron. You leave me alone. I leave you alone. We go our separate ways. The silence stretched. Finally, Aaron spoke. And if I say no, then we keep fighting. And eventually, one of us loses everything. Maybe both of us. Is that really what you want? Another pause. I'll think about it. The call ended. Carrie, who'd been listening, looked puzzled. What was that about? You're not really offering peace. No, but I needed him to think I was scared, that I was backing down. Why? Marshall pulled out his phone, showing her a text from Owen. Because while I was talking to Aaron, Owen was meeting with Councilman Escobar and 3 journalists. Tomorrow, they're going to announce a special investigation into the Riverside Towers project, specifically into safety violations and construction fraud. Carrie's eyes widened. You baited him, made him think you were weak, so he'd let his guard down. Aaron Prince thinks intimidation and money solve everything. He doesn't understand that sometimes the strongest move is appearing to surrender. Marshall pulled up the dossier on his laptop. Tomorrow, when this hits the news, the Prince family is going to face questions they can't answer. And every attempt to silence it will just make them look more guilty. This could destroy them. No, this could hold them accountable. There's a difference. Chapter 8, The Reckoning. The expose dropped like a bomb on Sunday morning. The Tribune ran Carolyn Lara's investigative piece on the front page. Luxury and Lies. Safety Concerns at Prince Family's Riverside Towers. The article detailed everything. The cut corners, the falsified inspections, the documentation Russell Gifford had provided, with his identity protected as an anonymous whistleblower. It included photos of structural issues, interviews with unhappy tenants, and statements from building inspectors who'd been pressured to overlook violations. But the real damage came from the supporting evidence. The city council announced an immediate safety investigation. The fire marshal ordered an inspection. The building department opened a review of all permits and certifications. By noon, news vans were parked outside Riverside Towers and the Prince family's corporate offices. By evening, 3 major television stations had run their own versions of the story. Aaron Prince's response was predictable: denial, threats of lawsuits, claims of a witch hunt. But the evidence was too solid, too well documented. His usual tactics of intimidation didn't work against a coordinated media investigation backed by government officials. Jared, true to form, made things worse. He gave an impromptu interview to a local news station where he appeared drunk and defensive, claiming the story was revenge by my former brother-in-law, and that Marshall had fabricated evidence. Marshall watched the interview from his office at the Sterling, Owen beside him. He's making it worse for himself, Owen observed. People like Jared always do. They've never been held accountable, so they don't know how to respond when someone finally says no. His phone rang. Carrie, have you seen the news? Watching it now. Marshall, they're trying to blame you. They're telling anyone who will listen that you manufactured this whole thing out of revenge. Let them. The evidence speaks for itself. And the more they blame me, the more desperate they look. There's something else. Allison's trying to void the divorce settlement. Her lawyers filed an emergency motion claiming you defrauded her by hiding this information during negotiations. Marshall felt a flash of anger, but controlled it. Can they do that? They could try, but it's a weak argument. The settlement was about your marriage and your businesses, not about exposing their building violations. Still, you should be prepared for a fight. I'm always prepared. The week that followed was chaos. The city's investigation confirmed the Tribune's findings. Riverside Towers had multiple code violations, structural issues, and safety hazards. Residents were given the option to break their leases without penalty. The building's occupancy was capped until repairs could be made. The Prince family's stock price plummeted. Partners began distancing themselves. Aaron was forced to announce he was stepping back from day-to-day operations, appointing a crisis management team to handle the fallout. But the biggest shock came on Thursday. Jared Prince was arrested. The charges were serious: bribery, falsifying official documents, and criminal negligence. Apparently, the investigation had uncovered emails where Jared had explicitly instructed contractors to hide violations and had paid off an inspector to approve substandard work. Marshall watched the perp walk on television, Jared being led to a police car in handcuffs, his face a mask of disbelief and rage. It should have felt triumphant. Instead, Marshall felt oddly empty. Carrie called immediately. Did you know they had enough for criminal charges? I suspected, but I didn't push for it. The evidence led them there on its own. How do you feel? Marshall considered the question. Like I did what needed to be done. But Jared's not the real problem. He's just a symptom of a family that never learned accountability. What about Allison? What about her? She's been trying to reach you. Call my office 3 times today. Marshall closed his eyes. What does she want? To talk. She sounds different. Scared, maybe. Tell her I'm busy. Marshall. She made her choice, Carrie. She chose them over me, over us, over basic decency. Now she gets to live with that choice. But that night, Marshall found himself thinking about his wife. Ex-wife, he corrected. He wondered if she'd known about Jared's criminal behavior, about the danger her family's greed had put people in. He wondered if she regretted anything. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Please. I need to talk to you. Allison. Marshall stared at the message for a long time before deleting it. Chapter 9. The Victory. 3 months later, Marshall stood in the kitchen of the Sterling, preparing for the restaurant's official grand opening. The soft launch had been successful, but tonight was special. A black-tie event with the mayor, city council members, local celebrities, and supporters who'd stood by him during the Prince family saga. The past 3 months had been transformative. The Sterling was now the hottest restaurant in the city, with a 6-month waiting list. His other restaurants were thriving. His catering business had doubled. Marshall Stout was no longer just a successful restaurateur. He was a symbol of something larger. The Riverside Towers investigation had concluded with devastating results for the Prince family. Jared was facing 5 to 10 years in prison after pleading guilty to reduced charges. Aaron had been forced to sell off multiple properties to cover legal fees, fines, and settlements with former tenants. The family's empire was crumbling. Allison had reached out twice more, both times through Carrie. Both times, Marshall had declined to respond. Whatever she wanted to say, it was too late. Carrie arrived early, looking elegant in a navy dress. Ready for your big night. As ready as I'll be. You know half the city's elite is coming tonight, right? Including people who wouldn't have given you the time of day a year ago. Marshall shrugged. Success changes perspective. It does. But you haven't changed. That's what I admire about you. You won, Marshall. You beat them. And you didn't become them in the process. I didn't beat them. They beat themselves. I just refused to play by their rules. Guests began arriving at 7. Marshall moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations, making small talk, playing the role of gracious host. But his mind was elsewhere, thinking about the journey that had brought him here. Then he saw her. Allison stood near the entrance, looking uncertain and out of place. She was thinner than he remembered, her confidence dimmed. Their eyes met across the room. Marshall excused himself from his conversation and walked over. What are you doing here? I needed to see you. To apologize. Carrie didn't put you on a guest list. I know. I crashed. I'm sorry. She trailed off, looking lost. Marshall studied her, seeing the cracks in her polished exterior. What do you want, Allison? To tell you I was wrong. About everything. About you, about my family, about what mattered. She blinked back tears. I've lost everything, Marshall. My family's reputation is destroyed. Jared's in prison. My father won't speak to me because I won't publicly blame you for what happened. I have nobody. And you thought I'd what? Take you back? Comfort you? I thought you might understand what it's like to lose everything. Marshall felt a flash of anger. I didn't lose everything. I built everything. From nothing. While you and your family mock me for it. There's a difference. I know. God, I know. And I hate myself for how I treated you. For how I let them treat you. She reached for his hand. But I loved you once. Didn't I? Wasn't some of it real? Marshall gently pulled his hand away. Maybe it was. In the beginning. But you chose them, Allison. Every time it mattered, you chose them. You laughed at their jokes about me. You share a private life with them. You helped them try to destroy me. I didn't know about Jared's crimes. About the building. But you knew about the cruelty. You participated in it. And that was a choice. Allison's face crumpled. So that's it. I apologize and you just... What? Reject me like I'm nothing. No. I acknowledge your apology. I even believe you mean it. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. And it doesn't mean going back. So what am I supposed to do? Marshall softened slightly. What everyone has to do. Start over. Build something real. Learn from your mistakes. You're young. Allison. You have time to become someone better than you were. Will you ever forgive me? Maybe. Someday. But we're done. That chapter of both our lives is closed. Allison nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. You were always better than us. I should have seen it. She turned to leave, then stopped. The restaurant is beautiful, Marshall. Everything you've built, it's incredible. You deserve all of it. Marshall watched her walk out, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Relief. Sadness. Closure. Carrie appeared at his elbow. Was that? Yeah. You okay? I am actually. For the first time in a long time, I really am. The rest of the evening was a triumph. The mayor gave a speech praising Marshall's contributions to the city's culinary scene. Councilman Escobar announced that a street near the Sterling would be renamed in honor of Marshall's late father, Herman Stout, to recognize the values of hard work and integrity. Owen pulled Marshall aside during dessert. "Brother, we did it. Against all odds, we actually did it. We did. What's next?" Marshall smiled. "Expansion. There's a property downtown I've been looking at. Perfect for an upscale steakhouse. And I've been talking to some investors about a culinary school, teaching kids from backgrounds like mine how to cook, how to run a business." A culinary school? That's ambitious. So, was a kid from Riverside becoming a successful restaurateur? So was standing up to one of the city's most powerful families. Ambition is what got me here. As the party wound down and the last guest departed, Marshall stood alone in his restaurant's dining room. The Sterling was everything he dreamed it would be. Elegant, successful, meaningful. His phone buzzed. A text from a number he didn't recognize. "What you did to my family is unforgivable. This isn't over. AP, Aaron Prince, still making threats even in defeat." Marshall smiled and deleted the message. Let Aaron threaten. Marshall had faced his worst and emerged stronger. He learned something crucial in this whole ordeal. Power isn't about money or family name or connections. Real power comes from knowing who you are and refusing to compromise that knowledge for anyone. He thought about his father, working double shifts at the mill. About Carlo, teaching him the restaurant business. About every person who'd believed in him when he had nothing but determination and vision. "I made it, Dad," Marshall said quietly to the empty room. "Not the way they said I should. Not by being quiet or accepting my place. I made it by being exactly who you taught me to be." The next morning, Marshall arrived early at Giuseppe's, his first restaurant. Despite all his success, this place still felt like home. He put on his apron and went into the kitchen, starting to prep work alongside his staff. Viola Perry looked surprised to see him. "Mr. Stout? I thought you'd be sleeping in after last night." "Can't. Food doesn't cook itself." She smiled. "No, it doesn't. But you don't have to be here doing prep work. You're the owner." "I'm a cook first," Marshall corrected. "That's who I was before all this. That's who I'll be after. The rest is just details." As he chopped vegetables beside his team, Marshall felt the satisfaction that came from honest work, from creating something valuable with his own hands. The Prince family had tried to break him, to make him doubt his worth. Instead, they'd reminded him of his strength. He'd won, not by becoming like them, but by remaining himself. And that, Marshall thought as he worked, was the greatest victory of all. Epilogue. 6 months later, Marshall Stout cut the ribbon on the Herman Stout Culinary Academy, a school dedicated to training aspiring chefs from underprivileged backgrounds. The building was beautiful, state-of-the-art kitchens, professional-grade equipment, and classrooms designed to nurture the next generation of culinary talent. Carrie stood beside him, beaming with pride. Owen was there with his family. Viola Perry had become the Academy's first head instructor. Santos Delgado and Russell Gifford attended as honored guests. Russell's testimony had been crucial in the final criminal case against Jared Prince. In the front row sat an elderly Herman Stout, retired now, but present to see his son's triumph. "You did it, boy," Herman said quietly, gripping Marshall's hand. "You really did it." "We did it, Dad. Everything I learned from you." As Marshall welcomed the first class of students, 30 young people with dreams as big as his once were, he thought about the journey that brought him here. The struggles, the betrayals, the battles, and ultimately the victory. The Prince family had taught him an important lesson. Systems that protect the powerful at the expense of everyone else only persist when good people stay silent. Marshall had refused to stay silent. And in doing so, he not only won his personal battle, but created something that would outlast it. Opportunity for others to rise as he had. Jared Prince was serving his sentence at a minimum security facility. Aaron Prince had retired in disgrace, his empire divided among his creditors. Allison had moved to another state, reportedly working in her cousin's marketing firm, trying to rebuild her life. Marshall bore them no ill will anymore. They were simply part of his past, lessons learned on the road to becoming who he was meant to be. As the students filed into their first class, eager and nervous and hopeful, Marshall smiled. This was his legacy, not wealth or fame or revenge, but the chance he was giving others to succeed on their own terms. The waiter who became an owner. The cook who built an empire. The man who proved that in America, merit still mattered more than money. Marshall Stout had won his war. Now he was building his peace, and it was delicious.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.